Hello, my name is Ray Bowman. I've been involved in international trade, import, and export for over 30 years. I'm a certified global business professional. I'm the director of the EDC Small Business Development Center. This is part of the SBDC program funded by SBA, which provides free business advising services to small and medium-sized companies. I'm also the program chair for the Southern California District Export Council. We're a group of volunteers dedicated to promote U.S. exports. I'm also a professor at California Lutheran University as well as Santa Barbara City College, teaching courses in supply chain logistics, trade finance, and international business. I also belong to a number of trade associations, including the American Association of Exporters and Importers, as well as NASBITE. NASBITE not only promotes and developed the C.G.BP certification, but they're dedicated to providing international trade education for small and medium-sized businesses throughout the world. In this lesson, we're just going to talk about the considerations, some of the things you need to know before you ship internationally, whether it's importing or exporting. So some of the things or considerations you need to know are the product description. Can you fully describe your product? What is it that you're buying or selling? What are your buying terms? Not just what your Incoterms are, but what are the terms and conditions that you've set in your buying or sales agreement, including pre-advice, notifications, who the consignee is, where goods are being delivered, what kind of warranties are involved, what are the timelines agreed to between buyer and seller. What are the lead times? So how much time do you need from the factory to the truck to the ultimate delivery of the products, and when do they need to arrive? So it's very important to establish these lead times throughout the supply chain. Other shipping considerations. Are your goods subject to special packaging regulations? Do they need to be handled specially? Is this sensitive cargo? What are any one of the special considerations that you might have with your product? What are the compliance issues? Do your goods have to meet certain compliance regulations when they arrive in the foreign country? Or are they subject to compliance issues such as export licenses on the export side? Next is some product considerations. What is the end use of the product? It's essential to be able to describe the end use and essential character of the product in order for determinations to be made, such as duties and taxes. Does the product include any accessories or parts? So this is essential from the standpoint of describing the goods from a customs standpoint, as well as understanding what some of the future requirements may be to support that product that you've sold or bought internationally. Is the product in its retail packaging, or is the product to be exported or imported going to be shipped bulk and then have to be retail packaged in the destination market? So this is an important requirement, especially if you're using third-party logistics companies. Does the product meet certain standards and terms of the sales agreement? So there may be standards above and beyond regulated standards, but there may be standards associated with buyer and seller. In other words, the buyer may have a particular product spec. It might be a color spec, it might be a technical specification. So what are those specifications? Have you worked them out prior to shipping the goods? And are there any inspections formed on a pre-shipment basis? A lot of international buyers will require inspections to make sure that they have the right quality, the right quantity. You also have to look downstream. You may be selling to a buyer that has certain requirements of you, but they in turn may have certain requirements to their end user. Or likewise, if you're an importer selling to a major retailer, chances are you sold based on a certain packaging and logistics agreement that you'll have to also require from your supplier. So it's important to think about those things prior to shipping. What are some important buying terms before you ship? Some of the important buying terms are establishing the correct Incoterm for the transaction. Who is responsible for the bill of lading? Especially in ocean shipping, the bill of lading is a title document. What that means is that the seller or the owner of that bill of lading has to release those documents or surrender those documents so that the buyer can get a hold of the shipment. What is the payment method being used? Is it open account, letter of credit, cash against documents, advance payment? It's important to establish these things within your buying terms. And what documents are required to trigger payment? Is it an invoice that's triggering payment on open account? Is it a letter of credit that's requiring bills of ladings and maybe other documents to ensure the release and payment of the goods? So different types of documents prove between buyer and seller and also trigger the payment between the seller and the buyer. What kind of pre-advice is required on the transaction? This is often missed in the supply chain. If goods are delayed, if goods are shipped, you as an exporter may have performed perfectly to the buyer with the exception of the fact that you never told them actually when the goods were arriving. So pre-advice is very important. It's an important part of the supply chain planning for both the exporter and the importer and should be integrated into the buying terms. A little more about lead time. What is the lead time from purchase order to the shipment of goods? What lead time does buyer and seller control? So it's very important to look at those lead times. Do you have a way of monitoring those lead times? It's all well and good to establish certain lead times and notifications, but how do you monitor it? How do you check on that? Oftentimes, importers will use both their freight forwarder and their factory to check on each other. They'll get status from several different entities in order to make sure they can monitor either one or the other. Do you have a system for adjusting lead times? In other words, do you have a plan B? One of the most important things in the supply chain is to have an alternative plan if things don't go as planned. So that's a very important feature to have. Don't base your entire supply chain on best case scenario. You have to account for worst and middle case scenario as well. So some overall shipping considerations. When do the goods need to arrive? It's important to communicate this not only between buyer and seller, but to your freight forwarder and logistics company. What is the weight and measure of the goods? All transportation pricing is based on either the weight of the goods or the volume of the goods. So it's very important to know what the weight and measure is of the goods that you're shipping. Do you have a planned time scenario for your supply chain? And again, the supply chain scenario should be based on averages or middle case scenario, not the best case scenario. You always have to have a plan B. How do you monitor shipping milestones? In other words, how do you check to make sure that the goods were picked up from the factory, or goods were delivered to the warehouse, or goods were delivered to the port and destined to the ultimate destination, or what's the status of goods that have cleared customs destined to the buyer or the consignee? Were the goods inspected at the point of loading and unloading? And this is an important feature. A lot of goods get damaged in transit. So it's very important to check goods and the condition as they are coming out of the factory, but additionally check the goods as they're being loaded and unloaded to make sure that the supply chain doesn't cause any undue damage of the goods. Again, supply chains can affect the goods, the quality of the goods, and when they arrive. So it can be a big influencer on the value. Do you have a contingency plan in place? Again, I keep mentioning Plan B, but it's important if you're planning out, especially the international supply chain. And do your supply chain vendors understand your need? It's important that your customs broker, your freight forwarder, your warehouse understand the demands that your customer is putting on you and the deadlines and lead times that you have to live by in order to keep your business growing and consistent. What are some key compliance considerations? What is the harmonized code number? The harmonized code is an essential number to establish that determines the duties of the product when they arrive in the foreign country. It's both important from the importer standpoint, but it's equally important from the exporter standpoint, because how can you understand landed cost if you don't know what the impacts of duties and taxes are based on classification in the foreign country? Have you sought the advice of a compliance professional? Again, compliance professionals can be customs, either in your home country or in the destination country. It could be trade attorneys, licensed customs brokers, trade associations. So it's very important to make sure that you're an informed importer or exporter. What are the regulations that apply to your specific shipment? Those regulations can change from country to country, and it's important to know what they are. What are the documentary requirements? Again, I've said this previously, but up to 7% of all international trade is wasted on bad documentation. So it's important to have good, accurate documents that are consistent with the story of your purchase order or buying and selling terms. Do your vendors understand your compliance needs? So that goes not only with the factory, the warehouse, but your shipping companies, your customs brokers, the truckers that pick up and deliver. Your entire supply chain needs to be aware of what the needs are for your particular shipment. And do you have a compliance plan? A compliance plan is not only having effective compliance programs in place, but also have effective record keeping as well as effective procedures for that compliance. If you're ever audited, it's important that you be able to produce the right documents that the auditors require, but to also demonstrate that you have written plans in place that deal with classification, documents that make sure that your compliance plan is thorough. So that's a very important consideration. In fact, having a good compliance plan can help you not only prevent penalties, but manage and mitigate those penalties when they happen, if they happen.